this is Paul Chek. Welcome back to my video blog series, which is seemingly unending. Hallelujah. Today we are going to begin a series on the body-mind or mind-body connection. And that's the theme of the Institute this month. And I have written a lot about that and have that kind of information in many of my courses. Very heavy in PPS Success Mastery Lessons 1, Lesson 2, Lesson 9, Don't Get Your Feathers Wet. If you look through the lessons, there's quite a lot of this type of information in there because I feel it's necessary to have, shall we say, a broad understanding of life as opposed to a narrow understanding, which can be narrow. So, before I get into this, I want to share that though I am referencing other people's work and concepts to support what I'm sharing with you, I want to make clear that I am sharing what is real to me as a person. Some of you like to leave comments and argue and fight about these things and just counter-argue. You cannot counter-argue your own experience. These are just, as the Buddhists say, fingers pointing toward the moon. What I'm telling you is I spend a lot of time and have throughout most of my life. My mother started training with Paramahansa Yogananda's monks when I was 12. I was sent away to summer camp when I was 15 and spent a whole summer with monks learning meditation techniques and understanding really metaphysics. My whole life has been a pursuit of these concepts, and it really became very important to me as a therapist because I found, as I was working largely with medical failures, that people got treated over and over by different doctors for the same problem, sometimes for years and years on end, and often never did get results and ended up becoming my patients. And what I had to do was look into what is the idea or the belief behind the behavior that results in the choice or action that has led to the body-mind dysfunction in my patient. For example, most people's low back pain is not a physical disorder in and of itself. In other words, they weren't born with a dysfunctional back. Their low back pain has something to do with mismanagement of, or it is an expression of the use of their mind and their choices, which represent beliefs and behaviors or core values. So my own study of world religion and all concepts related to it was essential for me to understand, as I've often said, the knee of a Muslim is not the same as the knee of a Christian, is not the same as the knee of someone practicing Hinduism. And I actually had a physician who read that once write to me and say, I would like you to clarify what you mean. I'm a surgeon, and I can tell you the knees are pretty much the same in those different people. And my clarification is that a Christian, a Muslim, and someone practicing Hinduism all use their knees in accordance with the beliefs, the values, and the behaviors. So if somebody comes to you as a Muslim with knee pain and you don't realize they're praying 5 times a day on their knees, possibly on a hard floor, then you can keep treating the knee problem indefinitely without realizing that it has something to do with their belief. Without going on a long expose, I think it should be fairly clear. So in this mind-body series, I've drawn up a little model that I'm going to use to explain things to you that are not just theories for me. They're not just things out of books. I'm going to share things with you out of books so you have ideas of where you can look into these things yourself, and I have hundreds and hundreds of such books, many of which I've studied. The most important thing for me to share with you is that I am sharing my own personal experience through countless hours of tai chi, Qi-gong, meditation, shamanic healing, shamanic practice, life challenges, and all all those things that are related. This is not by any means a dictation. This is not me suggesting that you have to live this way, and if you aren't living this way, it's wrong. It's me sharing what I've experienced and what I've come to understand through my own life experience, and it is exposing you to the basic concepts and principles that all the Chek Institute programs that I have produced were built upon. So with that preface, I'd like to take you through the model. I don't know how many parts this series will go because each day I just write it up as I go, but generally we're going to go through this. Today is part 1, love as potential. So we're going to talk about the potential of unconditional love and what zero means and how important potential is to us. So here you see my diagram containing love. I meditated on what love really is for a very long time, a couple of years consistently before I started getting more and more pieces of the puzzle that begin to make sense to me, and then I began searching for other authors who may have had similar observations, and I found 2, one of which was Michio Kushi, whose writings are very, very deep and good. I cannot remember at this moment who the other one was. L stands for desire, or yin, or emptiness. When we desire to eat, it's because we perceive that there's emptiness in our stomach. When we desire intimacy with another person, it's often because we perceive there's some form of emptiness, let's say, in our heart or in our life. So desire is the attractive force of yin, or the feminine force. L stands for life. To live, you must have the desire to live. People that do not have the desire to live kill themselves either slowly or fast. People that don't have the desire to live, but are, shall we say, not ready to take their own life, just stop taking care of themselves and stop participating in lives, so they die very slowly. But for all practical purposes, they're not really fully participating in creating something of themselves out of their potential. VE stands for volt electron, the electromotive force, which really is a scientific notation that I'm assigning will or willpower to. O in love is zero, which means unconditional love, because zero does not have a condition. You cannot assign it a condition. And zero also stands for pure potential. So we're going to look largely at the unconditional love or zero element today, but then we will drop down and we will look at the 2 qualities of zero, which I will show you in a minute, a simple way to recognize them. We'll look at the classic Holy Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Brahma, Shiva, Krishna. Each major religion has one, but the key thing is it represents the flow of potential into actuality, so that what we will call mind can have an experience in body or in life, if you will. I will show you some of the qualities. I will show you the correlation between Om, mind, Tai Chi. Then we'll drop down, we'll look at love as it relates to the archetypes that we all should know about and understand, what a myth is and why that's important to know and understand. And then we're going to look at how the archetypes, the myth, or the beliefs equate to our choices, therefore our experiences, which manifest themselves as a physical expression through our embodiment. So if your belief is that you should be a vegetarian, but you come from a region of the world where your genes require that you eat flesh foods, because, for example, if you were from Sweden or Germany or somewhere where the ground freezes, you would have had to eat flesh foods to survive the winter. And therefore, if you're acting out the idea of a vegetarian because you think it's cruel to kill animals, or you think that's what God wants, your body will reflect the, shall we say, relative truth, relative because you're embodied, of your decisions, and to the degree that you have health, vitality, mental clarity, emotional stability, and are capable of living your dream, then you're doing the right thing. But to the degree that those of us who observe you see an unhealthy body or a person who's fragmented, then we could say that that idea is not one that is executing or extracting your potential. So we see that these things are all intimately connected. So we'll run through that model, and I'll make references to the best of my ability and share which programs I've developed help you explore more of this body-mind connection. And so with that stated, let's go ahead and start on our first little mini lesson on the body-mind reality, if you will. So here you see unconditional love. Unconditional love is in a dotted line. In drafting, if there's a dotted line, it means there's something there, but you can't see it from this perspective. For example, right now I'm looking at the kitchen wall. If I was looking at plans, I could see something behind the wall. It would show up as a dotted reference. So this means there without being there. It can also be used conceptually. If I put the dotted line around the tai chi symbol, it would mean wu chi. Tai chi, by the way, means the same thing as love. My own interpretation, because it works with current knowledge, is that tai chi means the marriage or the entanglement of perceptibly complementary but opposite forces. So because you can't have yin without yang, in quantum physics terms, they are entangled. Wu chi means, wu means not. So if tai chi, this process, produces life and life force, that's tai chi or love. Wu chi would mean not chi or not love. So for this to exist, there has to be the equal possibility that it may not exist. The table wasn't always there, and the table won't always be there. The tree wasn't always there, and the tree won't last forever. So Wu Chi means that everything that emerges as something begins as potential. And just as it emerges as something, it has equal potential to, shall we say, not be there. Which would be, material existence can become immaterial. Life can become death. The visible can become invisible. The knowable is an expression of the unknowable. Okay? So unconditional love could be equated to Wu Chi. We won't go into it more technically than that, just to keep it easy for people that haven't got a lot of philosophical background. But we want to now look at this concept of unconditional love, or the zero force, the potential force of love. So unconditional love equals zero equals potential. Unconditional love means love without condition. If I say, I love my son, I have created a condition. I have said, I love my son, which excludes everybody else. Anytime that we assign love in any direction, we are creating a condition whether we know it or not. We can't effectively love unconditionally because the act of loving anyone or anything automatically produces a condition. We can use the term, I love my son unconditionally, which means I would love him no matter what he does or what he becomes, but that's not really what I'm speaking of here. Unconditional love equals zero because zero does not have, shall we say, a border, barrier, or definition. Zero, in this sense, does not mean nothing. It means no dash thing. And no thing equals every dash thing, because something that exists as potential does not have to have a definition. It's potential. And because no thing is everywhere and nowhere at the same time, it's simultaneously everything. These are concepts that are very hard to understand from a rational perspective in many instances, but we must remember that prose has a counterpart called poetry. Logic has a counterpart called the illogical. Art is the illogical or poetic expression of what we might call science. So you see there's these complementary opposites in everything. So I've assigned 0 to unconditional love because 0, by definition, is the number that does not imply conditions from a metaphysical perspective. Metaphysically speaking, 0 equals 1 because everything that is comes out of pure potential. You can see I have a note here, eternity is. The Aboriginals say, according to Robert Lawler in his book Voices of the First Day, which is excellent, eternity is physicalized as place. That is very, very important to remember. Eternity is physicalized as place. What that means is potential manifests as existence, reality, or therefore love. I look out the window, I see something. There's some kind of a condition. A planet is here. Stars are here. Warm, cold. Those are conditions. So we know that we have a conditional relationship that emerges from that which is unconditional. Thus, the Aboriginals say eternity is physicalized as place. Now, if we look at 0, we also can look into the research of the 0 on the 0-point field. So if you look at the book The Field by Lynn McTaggart, it's excellent and gives you lots of interesting investigations. If you want to know more about the universe in 0, you can look into the works of Stephen Hawking, who is one of the people that has proven mathematically that everything that you see actually emerges from 0. So even the left-brainers, mathematicians, and atheists are coming to the same conclusion via Stephen Hawking and people like that. There's also a great book called Something from Nothing by Lawrence M. Krauss, another atheist, but you can take his scientific definitions and explanations of how scientific fact now demonstrates that you can get something from nothing. So what I'm saying is, what were once metaphysical concepts beyond the physical, they're still metaphysical, but they're becoming more objective within the construct of our, shall we say, thinking models today. In other words, our rational understanding. Now, if you look at 0, if you assign a 1, 0 equals 1, because pure potential produces the universe, universe, one verse, one song. So metaphysically 0 equals 1. Everything that's countable or can be known comes from 0. 0 equals 1. 1, as I'll show you, has 2 inside of it. If you take 1 and you put the decimal point there, you have 1. If you move it there, you have 10. If you move it there, you have 100, 1,000, 1,000,000. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that can go on. You can literally make that number bigger for the rest of your entire life and couldn't even conceivably begin to create a number in one lifetime that was as big as the absolute. So 0 really is sort of a numerical expression of an absolute, because there's only 2 qualities to an absolute. Absolutely everything and absolutely no thing, speaking of the absolute of life. So if you take the 0, the 1, the decimal the other way, then what was 1 becomes 1/10, becomes 1/100th, becomes 1/1000th, etc. And that can go all the way till you get to the Planck scale. I think it's 10 to the minus 34, at which you then enter into the realm of quantum physics and subatomic particles. And that just keeps going into more and more divisions until you get to a point which has no mass but is tangible. A photon has no mass, but it's tangible. So what we see then is 0, unconditional love, expresses itself as the potential. Thought, or consciousness, if you will, is what assigns a value. If someone gets $1,000 a week as a paycheck, they may be very disgusted and disappointed because they think that's not nearly enough money. Yet standing right next to them might be someone who's doing the same job for the same pay and thinks that it's marvelous pay. The only difference is the thought perception of those two people. we all have our own unique perceptions of the good, beauty, truth, or value of anything in our lives, and we have the potential through mind to express whatever we want to. That's the key thing. Rumi, the famous Persian poet, who could easily have been called a metaphysician, who is called a mystic, said, "Beyond judgment, there's a field. I will meet you there." Beyond judgment, to judge means to identify something. I have a $1,000 paycheck and I'm pissed off, or I have a $1,000 paycheck and I'm excited. Those are judgments. Beyond judgment, there's a field. I'll meet you there. In quantum physics language, once you collapse the wave function, you have some kind of particle or material something that can be observed, but before the wave function collapses, there's nothing there to observe. So what I want to do is I want to read to you some descriptions from two different schools of thought that basically give us something that we can chew on with love as potential based on zero as unconditional love. The first one I'm going to read to you comes from an excellent book, Knowledge of Time and Space by Tarthang Tulku. I read this book several years ago. It's a very good read. It's some mental gymnastics for the conditioned mind, but it's an excellent read, and a lot of these Buddhist thinkers are very clear-headed, very deep thinking, such as the Dalai Lama, for example. So speaking of the field, the potential to become that which is unconditional but must be there because existence is here is what I'm referring to when I say the field, which would also be the equivalent of the scientific notion of the zero-point field. Tarthang says, without the field that gives space, time, and knowledge, space could not be boundless or time beginningless, nor could knowledge know. But the field itself is not part of what is given. Its relativity is not a claim to be proved or disproved because the field establishes what is real and not real. Not the field as a conceptual structure to be judged true or false, because the field encompasses the possibility of making such judgments. So the field cannot be included in your judgment of what's true or false because the field is, shall we say, the prerequisite of the judgment. And I would propose from my own meditations and explorations and studies on what consciousness is, that you could take the U and the L off and put C for consciousness there. Unconditional love and consciousness in my model mean the same thing. And we'll get into that more later so that makes more sense. So he goes on and he says, although the field could not be thought of as a logical necessity, as conventional space seems to be a necessity for objects, logic does not prove its existence, for logic operates only when the field is already in place. So he's saying you can't use a this or that mind concept, this is, that isn't, to identify the field, and you can't even really figure out what it is because the act of figuring it out is already a departure from what it is. And just as you can't be conscious of me talking unless you have consciousness as your first principle. But we don't really have anything to say about consciousness because consciousness is, shall we say, the blackboard, the screen, or the backdrop upon which things emerge. Potential is the backdrop upon which polarity or possibility emerges as complementary opposites such as he and she. So that is a Taoist or Buddhist, if you will, approach to this concept. Now there's tons of that in this book, and I've got many other books. I just thought this one was more readable. Now, for those of you Christians out there, If you have not ever seen the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary by Charles Fillmore, I highly recommend it. One of the things I do with my students is I make sure if they start dialoguing with me or discussing these things in class, and they start using words like heaven, hell, sin, Adam, Eve, gnosis, whatever it is, I check to see if they actually know what those words mean. And in all honesty, in all my years, I've never had a single discussion on Scripture with anyone who actually knew the meanings of the words they were using, with rare exceptions. And that means when I asked them. In other words, when I was suspicious, could you tell me what the word Eve actually means, or what the word sin means? Nobody could tell me the actual definition, which is very, very dangerous. If you look at Don Miguel Ruiz's new audiobook or book, The Fifth Agreement, you will learn a lot about why we have to be very, very careful about making assumptions and believing what other people told us and living it as though it was fact. Because as a therapist who's been doing this for 31 years, I can tell you right now that a lot of the facts people deify are not facts at all and lead to a lot of body-mind dysfunction. A lot of it. Most of it. Now, looking into mind, in my definition, the mind that we know, I want to eat this for breakfast and not that, is represented in the Tai Chi symbol, but mind really is an expression of potential. So now with that preface, let's see what Charles Fillmore has in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. It's hard for me to see in here, so I've got to hold the book funny. Mind. By the term mind, we mean God, the universal principle of causation, which includes all possibilities. Math emulates this principle that in the field, mathematics is a principle that in its field illustrates the exact and inexorable laws that are one with the manifestation of the mind of God. So there's an example of all principles exist within mind. Math is one of those principles that exemplify the mind of God. There is nothing but mind and thought principle and its mode of expression. Things are made or externalized are simply effects, and of themselves would quickly pass away, but mind and thought are one and inseparable, self-existent and ever active, the cause of all that appears. Okay? An understanding of God or universal mind is the very key to all scriptures and to all occult writings. In the story of creation as told by Moses, which is metaphysically correct, all things are brought forth by God said. Mind, thought. God said means metaphysically logos, word, which equals vibration. Thought, word are expressions of vibration. Tai Chi means all that exists, which is the same as Om, which represents the grand total of vibration, which means mind, in capital letters, in which your mind is, shall we say, functioning as part of. We are one with universal mind, but our inner experiences, our unique individual experiences, are also unique additions, novel additions to the totality of mind itself, which are expressions of potential. Therefore, we could say that what consciousness is constantly exploring itself and having unique experiences. And because consciousness is assigned to unconditional love, it means that what people call God is just as willing to explore the bad or the ugly, in most people's terms, as the good and the beautiful and the true. In paraphrase, Isaiah 45:7, I create the light and dark. I create good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. It's right there in the Bible. Straight up. I create light and dark. Light, yang, dark, yin. Good and evil. Complementary opposites. I, the Lord, do all these things. Right there. If you get the passage, then one, there's no need for religious wars. There's no need for conflict. And we understand essentially what God means or the Lord means. But we see that these polarities and these concepts are woven right into Christianity. But people just keep reading the parts that fit their programming from Sunday school, largely. Okay, so where does that bring us? Knowledge, as I've just described, that was Toku's book. So some of the tips. Unconditional love, the field, is the source of all potential. And in essence, we have the potential to do anything we want. We can fire walk, we can do all sorts of things. Look at all the things people have been able to do, and things that were thought to be impossible to do. I've seen documentaries where Taoist monks are doing amazing things. I literally saw one where the guy heated a shovel up till it was so hot it melted and folded back, and he literally held that thing on his tongue for many, many seconds. And steam was shooting off. It didn't hurt him, didn't do anything to him. I've done a fire walk with Tony Robbins. I was a therapist for Tony Robbins for many years and knew him personally as a friend. And the fire walk's real, and you got to do some work up here. But what happens when you get this right, all of a sudden the coals don't burn you. And when this is not right, I watched people get badly burned. I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division. I've done all sorts of wild and crazy stuff where I had to condition my mind so that my fears did not become my dominant belief, or I would not be here right now. So I am sharing with you that I have a lot of personal experience with a lot of these things, and I'm not just passing words on. I'm sharing from you that this model of living and this model of exploring yourself gives you an awareness that you have the potential to create what you want, to experience what you want, and to love yourself adequately to feel good about sharing love in relationship to others. So the tip is that unconditional love equals the field, which gives you everything. As a metaphor, I always say unconditional love can only say yes. To say no is a condition. This is why it's often said, be careful what you wish for, you might get it. There's a teaching story about the Buddha coming upon some young sannyasins who had just started training with him, and they were praying, i.e., Christian, Muslim, Jewish type praying, and he said, I don't think you should do that until I teach you how. And they said, why, Master? And he said, because you may not like the results you'll get. And what he was saying is that every one of your thoughts is a prayer, and you are already getting what you want, and to the degree that you're praying for something different, you probably are using the same system of creation that created the challenge. Therefore, you should learn to pray before you pray, so you don't just reinforce the behavior that already got you in trouble. Okay? Unconditional love or God cannot be known. You can't know God. You can know an idea, but you can't know God. Anything that can be known is here in Tai Chi, and for there every is, there's an equal and opposite isn't, which is the source of religious war. God is, oh, God isn't. I'll fight you over it. Okay? God is unconditional love. God cannot be known because to know something, you have to also know what it isn't. There's nothing God isn't. I create the light and the dark. I create good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. In other words, God is both subject and object. And when those two merge together, there's nothing to know. But there is everything to experience. And I can assure you of that from my own personal experiences, of many experiences of losing that to become that. to not even know that I existed as that, only to pop out and go, hallelujah. That was a wild trip, okay? And that's in shamanic work and through naturally aspirated performance, okay? So God cannot be known, only experienced. Spirituality is the process of having your own relationship with unconditional love or potential and taking responsibility for the choices that you make. Religion at large is following a bunch of stuff written on paper by other people, hoping that God's going to give you brownie points and give you a get into heaven without pain pass or something like that. So the key tip here of the day is dream, baby. Yes is the answer of unconditional love every time. Hey, I'm Paul Chek. I got a 9th grade education from junior high school before I left to become a daddy, and people told me a million times from Sunday, you'll never amount to anything, you need to go to school and get a degree, la 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 la. I didn't believe it, largely because the people that were telling me that didn't impress me at all with their intelligence and their degrees, so I didn't see the evidence. My point is that I extracted my own potential to create my own dream and believed in myself and was able to create an institute that helps thousands of people worldwide and have practitioners all over the world helping people to heal from painful belief systems that are based on concretized ideas as fact, which are dangerously flimsy, as Osho would say, paper boats. They're worshiping paper boats. So dream, dream, dream. Yes is the answer. PPS Success Mastery Lesson 1 takes you step by step through the process of identifying where your programming is holding you back potentially, which gets you ready for PPS Lesson 2, teaches you how to go through a life mandala process to understand where you may have been wounded or hurt and still may be carrying judgments and biases that are limiting your vision and your perception of what's possible and making you a victim, poor me, mommy this, daddy that, whatever it might be. You also look at the 10 components of a legacy, and you go through a mind mapping process that helps you identify what components of your overarching dream or legacy you are aware of, such as if you want to live somewhere sunny and warm, and that's the only thing you know, start right there. Once you have one piece of a puzzle, if you got a 1,000-piece puzzle and the first piece you pick up has a human lip on it, don't you already know the next piece you're looking for has something to do with a mouth? So once you know one piece of those 10 components, you can begin attracting the rest to yourself, and you can create the dream of your life. I call where I'm at heaven because I used all my knowledge, skills, and abilities and trusted myself to create an environment that was heaven for me, and everything manifest as I have done in my past, and therefore I had the confidence to trust in myself. But many people would never expect that the guy that runs this operation never finished high school. I'm telling you, you have the potential to be anyone if you're willing to do the work that makes it all worth it anyhow. Every mother that wants to have a baby has to do the work of being pregnant and giving birth. There's no way around that. All dreams need a mother. You are the mother and the father of your dream, and PPS Success Mastery Lesson 1 teaches you how to go about building that dream, and PPS Success Mastery 2 takes you through a comprehensive process of identifying what ideas or mind viruses are stopping you from creating the life you want so you can heal those. So in my next lesson, we will continue down and we'll expand on some of these things. And this should give you, once again, a little bit of a sense of the underpinnings of the overarching philosophy of the Chek system. In closing, it does not require that somebody share my beliefs to be a Chek practitioner, but it does require that you are willing to love and support all people of all creeds, all walks of life, and all religious beliefs, with the same level of affinity, love, and connection and compassion you would share someone who you would say is congruent with your beliefs. I.e., if you're a Christian, my system requires that you're willing to love and support a Muslim or anyone else the same way you would support another Christian. And if you can't do that, then you're really not ready to be a Chek practitioner. So that's the distinction. So thanks for joining me. I'll be looking forward to sharing another edition of this little series with you soon.